Let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10 to 5. A touchdown with Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Left with White. Beaverson. He's gone. Touchdown. Tavon Austin.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
They want to have a 7-on-7 drill. We want to make it a fist fight. Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football.
From the heart. Streaming. It's Mountaineer pride. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
West Virginia is a special place. People of the state that have great pride in this WV logo.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads webcast channel. October 4th edition, second live stream here in October, and this one's going to be a really fun one, I do believe. We're here on the bye week. We're titling it Bye Week Babble, and we're just going to kind of break down the WVU football season up to this point, probably look at it maybe position by position, something like that. But, of course, once your questions along the way, we'll use those as jumping off points for talking points as we continue throughout this. And got a great guest on to help me talk about the Mountaineers, and has a great channel here on YouTube you need to subscribe to, as you see on the whiteboard there behind me. And, of course, it's the host of the WVU Football Going Deep channel. Welcome, Forrest. What's going on, Forrest? Good to have you on tonight, man.
You think I know what's going on?
I know I don't. That's why I'm always asking everybody else.
I tell you what, though, first thing, pardon me while I have a sip of my coffee.
Oh, hey, there we go. Hey.
I've been waiting all day to say that.
A kindred spirit.
I figure we spend enough time watching you drink yours, you should return the favor.
I love that. I appreciate that, man. I really do. But before we get into this, we're going to, like I said, we're going to talk about the WVU season a little bit and answer your all's questions as well. So as always, encourage you guys in these live streams, drop them there in the chat. But Forrest, why don't you tell everybody that's in here already? And of course, we'll do it again when we get a few more people in here a little bit later, give some people a chance to roll in. But off at the top here, I wanted to give you a chance to promote your channel here. I know it's some really great Mountaineer sports content. Whenever I see you in here on a live chat, in the chat, they're always trying to promote it because I enjoy watching it myself. So I know other Mountaineer fans would too. And if they don't, they really need to check it out. It's great stuff you've got going over there. So tell them a little bit about WVU Football Going Deep on YouTube.
Well, of course, that is the name of it. Also have a page for it on Facebook. Not currently doing Twitter. I have an account, but I'm not a Musk fan. Main idea behind the page is I wanted to take a closer look at some of the things because it seemed to me so many people were just being superficial, which is why so much of the media was so completely wrong about this season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I look at numbers, but I don't look only at numbers. Yeah, and that's what screwed the media this time around. You cannot judge this team by the numbers.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. They're doing things, that don't show up on a stat sheet to get a lot of these wins.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you go by the stat sheets, we've lost just about every game except Duquesne.
Yeah.
And that one would have been close.
You're right. It was, they've been beat on the stat sheet, but getting wins in the win column, which, that's all that matters at the end of the day. And that's what we've been clamoring for. And, what we're also happy to see this season. And I think one thing that I've noticed is, you have, been in Neil Brown's corner, more than anyone along the way. Even, I've been a trust to climb guy from the beginning, but late last season, I was having my own doubts personally and came into this season on the fence, I think, like a lot of Mountaineer fans. But I think you, for lack of a better term, and no pun intended, could see the forest for the trees more than anyone else, really, when it came to that and the perspectives of Neil Brown right now. But just talk a little bit about that, what you think about, Coach Brown and the job that he's done, not only this season, but, building the program to get to this point that they're at, right now, to be, 4-1 here in year 5.
Well, now, of course, I do have videos about that on my channel.
Absolutely.
But mainly, again, it goes back to not looking at the numbers, because people don't understand what the problems were when he took over. And the lack of talent and depth on the roster was actually not the biggest problem. The problem was the mindset, the psychology. It's an oversimplification, but there are two ways of thinking. One is kind of based on an either-or approach that tends to favor numbers, wants absolute answers, everything's simple, and once you have an answer, it's set. And then the other side kind of likes questions and tends to look at things from multiple perspectives. And Holgorsen is very much a just do what I tell you coach. He's all about the X's and O's, and I think it confuses him that players can't do what he draws on the board exactly the way he draws it on the board. He's not good at distinguishing between X's and O's and real humans.
Yeah, communication's not his strong suit.
And he naturally attracted players who were the, either or mindset guys who like to be told what to do, don't want to think. And then once they were there, that got reinforced. And Brown is as polar opposite. I mean, he's a teacher. Mm-hmm. He sees coach and teacher as synonymous, and he wants players to think. He wants them to learn. He wants them to understand the system, not just do what they're told. And Holgorsen's players, they couldn't cope with that if they wanted to. I mean, we had guys like Sam James and Ford Wheaton who really wanted to buy into it, but they couldn't. They just did not have a psychology that worked. So the culture, you couldn't build the culture that Brown wanted as long as you had players who want to be told what to do. And now we have players who have not just the ability, it's willingness and ability to play with this kind of grit. Holgorsen's players couldn't do it. They played hard if the game mattered, but their sense of playing hard still had a ceiling. They didn't play for each other. They played for themselves.
Great point.
And when you play for the guy beside you, as much as you are playing for yourself, you play for the guys on the bench, hard reaches a whole different level. And we've seen it. There is no ceiling for how hard these guys can play. They say give 100%, but 100% of what? Because everything you've got varies from day to day and attitude to attitude. And what these guys have got, their 100% simply is more than 100% from most other teams. And it took all this time to get that in place. And really, culture.
Yeah.
Which only matters for coaches like Brown. Holgorsen culture doesn't matter because he doesn't believe in it. When he says he doesn't, first quote I read from him was, "I don't believe in all that rah-rah stuff." And rah-rah stuff is why guys play for each other and for the state. When this team says they're playing for West Virginia, they mean it. It's not just words.
You can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think mindset's a great way to put it, because with this team, that's what's going on. A lot of it is mindset. It is that culture that you're talking about. And, like we talked about, kind of the beginning of this show, the way that they're winning, it takes a ton of buy-in for people to be able to, want to play that way, and to, go out, every Saturday and to play that way and play as physical as they are. And, this bye week's coming at a perfect time, obviously, because the injuries are going to pile up, and that's kind of what you worry about with this playing style. But I absolutely love it. Love watching it. I, absolutely am adoring this team right now. I'm so proud of them and everything that they've done. But I think, you got to tip your cap to the job the coaching staff's done to be able to establish the culture, to get it to where it is right now, to be able to win the way that they're winning these games.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is the team has been heading in this direction since Brown was hired. Trust the climb. Everybody thought that was going up a ladder. But come on, anybody from West Virginia knows that a climb is kind of uphill, downhill, and around a hill. And that's
Definitely
what we've had to go through. You imagine walking through West Virginia, and that's the climb. But that's also why you could see this season coming by the last 4 games of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's I started pushing this year's team so hard because of the Oklahoma State game. You forget the numbers. Even if they had lost that game, it wouldn't have mattered as much. I was thinking about it today. It's like they were playing like their hair was on fire and their butts were catching, which is a slightly cleaned up version from Charlie Daniels' song. But in the rain could not put out the fire. And if you looked at that instead of the numbers, how could you not buy into this team? And that's the thing. Even the media who may have watched the game or some clips didn't understand what they were, and was watching some things today. You got a lot of people out there saying they were wrong, and that's good, but they still have no idea why they were wrong. They still can't look at 2022 and say, "Oh, that's what I missed." Yeah, they say, this season was entirely predictable. The only surprise is that the offense isn't doing better.
Yeah.
How well the defense is going, no surprise. And of course, with the offense, it's partly you've had, switching back and forth between quarterbacks, both of whom actually need more time. Because, Green, he takes too long to settle down at the beginning of a game. And he knows it. He's talked about it. That's why, he misses all these passes. And then you get halfway through the second quarter or into the third quarter, and he hits, 4, 5, 6 in a row. Same as Markiel did. But if we can get it to where either of them starts fast and plays loose from the beginning of the game, the entire offense opens up. Teams have to get out of the box, and the line opens holes, which they're creating a little space for the running game, but you can't expect the line to open a gap for a 10, 15-yard run with 8 in the box. And I think that's wearing on Donaldson.
Yeah.
He's a new running back, and he was used to getting these big holes to run through. And instinct was good enough. He didn't have to know what to do. Now he's getting crap knocked out of him on every play. And as a receiver and as a running back, he wasn't used to it. And I don't think he quite knows. I mean, he doesn't know what to do at this point. It's a learning curve thing. It's probably not as fun as it was. So we've got to get guys out of the box so Donaldson can have some fun.
Yeah.
And of course, the coaches keep telling them to play for the fun, but it's hard to play for the fun when 8 guys are hitting you every time.
Yeah, it's tough. And I don't care. I mean, he's a big guy, but I don't care how big you are. When they got 8, 9 guys in the box, it's going to take a toll on anyone. So, people at this point are saying, CJ doesn't look the same. He looks different. And, that's one of the main, look how many hits he's taken. He's already had, I think he's had close to as many carries this season as he had, last season right before he got injured. He had around this amount of carries. So it's a workload that he's never had before, to this point that he's about to hit. So it's taken a toll on his body. And the running back position, to me, we'll talk a little bit about these positions. Now let's start there with the running back since we're already talking about CJ. We'll bounce back to quarterback because I think running back to me is the one that coming in right here at the bye week, I probably wouldn't have predicted things to be how they are for that position. Being the fact that, the offense has struggled a little bit, but the offensive line has played well. But as you mentioned, and, the coaches have mentioned the running backs have, had issues, breaking tackles at times. And some of our leading rushing games have come from the quarterback position, be it Nico Marchiol or Garrett Green. I think the 100-yard game was Jaheim White against Duquesne, if I'm not mistaken. And, I'm a big Jaheim White fan for, so I'd love to see more of him going forward. And I think CJ Donaldson, he's going to, hopefully get past the little wall that he's hit. Maybe it's a sophomore slump. But what do you think about the running back position, to this point versus your preseason expectations now 5 games in? Are they about where you thought they'd be? A little bit worse, a little bit better? Because for me, I'm a little bit surprised. I thought they'd be a little bit better, but, there's still a lot of season left, I guess.
I don't think we can the preseason expectations you just have to throw out the window. Yes, we knew they would be run heavy. I don't think they ever intended to be this run heavy, but the quarterback issues have forced it, and weather at times. And so we have not forced guys out of the box. And, almost any other team in the country, if they were playing against 8 in the box every down, they would not be getting as many yards as West Virginia is. I mean, we're still averaging over 3 yards a carry. And against 8 in the box, that is good.
That's impressive.
So it's not winning that way isn't really sustainable. You need some bigger runs, which White gave us, against TCU, and he will play more. I mean, Brown has he has said that, and he's doing it, but he still has limitations to what he is ready to do. And you certainly don't want to bring him along too fast and get him hurt the way Donaldson did last year. Even though, he's an experienced running back, he's got the lower body for it. But, you got to be patient. So, I mean, I'm not unhappy with the backs themselves, but I am disappointed that we have not been able to get the defenses to respect the pass. And I'm sure that is something that will come up. And look at the third quarter against TCU. That was beautiful. Now, we didn't do a lot of running, but the passing, I mean, we saw what the passing game has the potential to be when Green is playing just as a natural flow. And we get a little of that going, and the running backs are going to look a lot better.
Good point.
And we've been controlling the clock, but I don't think we haven't been getting into a rhythm, especially for the passing game, but that affects the backs as well. So I don't think we're getting sort of the rotation of backs that they would like to have. And I mean, the the backs are not having the season they expected.
That's true.
I mean, they did not expect to be, throwing themselves into this mess every play. So, yeah, I mean, I think we'll get through this, and then we will know what the situation is with the backs. I'm not worried, except to the extent that guys can get hurt under these conditions. Obviously, the bruising is worse, but I think we are fine at running back. We're fine at offensive line. It is just hitting enough passes to force defenses back. And then we'll be looking at 35 points. The number of points we've been scoring per game is actually surprising when you look at, the offense. We haven't had the explosive plays, but we're still scoring some points. We open the offense just a little, hit another 8% of the passes, especially early, and we're probably looking at 40 points.
Yeah. You've seen flashes of it. Yeah, you've seen flashes at times. I think, like you said, that third quarter against TCU, and those drives, what really stood out to me is it was a lot of young guys making plays. We talked about Jaheim White, and then in the receiving end, you saw Rodney Gallagher, Hudson Clement, a lot of freshmen out there that are only going to get better. So I think the offense, there's room for improvement, certainly, yes. But I think that with those guys being young, they're only going to get better as the season progresses, you would think, typically. And, of course, the concern is, like you said, it's not really sustainable for West Virginia to play the way they're playing now with how teams are loading the box. They're going to have to open that passing game up. And I want to talk a little bit about that passing game here in a second, but catch up with some comments here in the meantime. Kuz, nice to see you in here as well. Appreciate the kind words there. He says, nice to see Forrest, and also mentions everyone to hit the thumbs up button. Yeah, please do that. That really helps us if you hit that like button. And then as far as Forrest's channel is concerned, I'm also going to put in the chat, guys, a link to his channel directly. So you can click that if you're in the chat, and it will take you right to the WVU Football Going Deep channel. Hit the subscribe button. If you're subscribed here, you should be subscribed there if you love West Virginia content. Great stuff going there. As you can see here and here, Forrest really knows his stuff when it comes to West Virginia football. Tone Chaser says, very cool. It feels great to have excitement surrounding the team again. The defense is fun to watch, and once the quarterback and receivers gain trust and familiarity with each other, the sky is the limit. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. So that's a great segue for us, Forrest. The quarterback and the receivers, and we can throw tight ends into discussion here as well with how big of a weapon Cole Taylor's been in the passing game. But in regards to that passing game, do you see the improving a lot from what we've seen, early in this season? Because as we talked about there, we know it's going to need to. We got the young players, coming into bigger roles. I personally think we'll probably see more of Horton, more of Gallagher, more of Clement, because those guys, have the speed to make the explosive plays that we could really use on this offense. But as far as this passing game, what do you see there, and how do you think it can improve, moving forward for the Mountaineers?
Well, of course, one thing, I think the issue with drops is mostly gone. We're going to have one or two drops every game. That's just natural. But every time a receiver drops the ball, it stands out more because it's been a problem. And I really, it wasn't as big an issue against TCU. So I'm not worried about that. People talk about the receivers not getting separation, but they get open a lot of the time. They don't get separation every play, but Clement has a knack.
Yeah,
and I mean, the thing, Clement works as hard as Frazier and the other linemen that we talk about. And we don't usually talk about a receiver working that hard. But if you look at just how much he's improved his blocking in 2 or 3 weeks, the coaches say, hey, you need to do this, and he does it. So, I mean, yeah, if you consider where he started last year compared to where he is now, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Gallagher has come on faster than anybody expected, and watching him run, he runs as hard as Donaldson does.
He does.
Gotta love that, and that just emphasizes the whole toughness of the team, which will spread among the receivers. But I like the receivers. Fox dropped a couple of passes, but we know he can catch. Ray, we haven't seen a lot of. He was hurt for a while, but I have he can throw.
Yeah, that was a nice surprise.
And of course, Carter, when the ball goes in his direction, good things usually happen. He had a bad game because he had some personal issues on his mind, but we haven't developed the rhythm. So we need to be throwing 25 passes or so a game.
Yeah.
And we haven't. We've been doing more like 15, sometimes 20, and we're getting closer to where we need to be. But once we get into that rhythm, the quarterback, the receivers are going to be good. Like I said, Clement, we're talking about him running 22.7 miles per hour.
He's moving.
Yeah, I know a lot of people. I've been behind cars where I wish they would drive that fast. And he's the second fastest receiver behind Horton. And we saw how tough Horton is when he came across the middle and took that hit. And these are all. Horton and Dixon are older. Taylor among the tight ends, but we're looking at a young group of wide receivers, a young team. This is a very, very young team.
It is.
And then if you look at the guys who are coming up behind, it just looks good. Cole Taylor, like you say, Cole Taylor makes catches. He dropped a pass in the end zone. Well, hey, crap happens. He also, caught a nice one that came behind him because Green had to throw it around the, official.
Yeah. And he hadn't played a ton in that game, prior to that, because I'd been wondering where he was. I didn't realize that he hadn't practiced all week until after the game. But, that was an important drive. And on 3rd and 8, they trusted him enough, despite him not practicing all week, to come in and make that play. That's what's awesome,
Yeah, and they trusted him, and he came through.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm surprised the offense hasn't come together, but I'm not worried about the offense coming together. It's going to happen, and I suspect the offense will benefit a lot from this short bye.
Yeah, I think so too. Get healthy, maybe even work on building up some more chemistry. It can only do good things for him moving forward. And like we said, it's young guys that are going to continue to get better on that offense. And also, it's easier to, improve an offense as a season moves along versus if you got a bad defense, you kind of just got a bad defense. It's not going to improve, that much. You can see an offense improve, a pretty good amount game to game. So that's something West Virginia has, going for them as well. And then last position group, I guess we need to discuss on the offensive line. I guess we kind of saved the best for last here. And that's that West Virginia offensive line. Man, they've been, they were raved about throughout the offseason. People wondered, can they live up to this hype? And, the thing that I've been stating is not only have they lived up to the hype for me, I think in a lot of ways they've exceeded it, because I knew they'd be good in run blocking, but the pass protection is what's been, impressive to me as well. I think that's been a little bit further ahead than I expected it to be. And I expected this offensive line to be pretty good, but I've been very impressed with their play. What about you?
Yeah, the pass blocking, you can see it more clearly because the quarterback's not really getting sacked. He's not getting hurried a lot. And these are guys who move out of the pocket, and sometimes they don't necessarily have to, but it's not a problem. You can't see it as clearly in the run game, again, just because 8 guys in the box. If you get a slight crease and a little movement against 8 in the box, you're doing an excellent job. Now, I think, so you look at the PFF grades, and they're not that good on the run blocking. And I don't think it's fair, because I don't really think they are taking into account what the offensive line is up against.
Right.
But if you want to summarize the offensive line, I think you say 14 knockdowns in one game just for Frazier. Now, I'd be curious how many knockdowns the whole line has been getting per game. I don't know if the other guys go for that as much as Frazier does, but 14 knockdowns in a game. And
he's got to be the best center in the country.
Yeah. And I just hope, again, Nestor is the only one who we lose to graduation. Frazier could go to the NFL if he chooses. Assuming he doesn't get injured, he is likely to be, a high draft pick.
Yeah.
My hope is that he will look at next year's potential. Because I'm not saying that we are going after a national title next year, but we are definitely going after the Big 12 championship, which they've never done. And that might be enough, because he loves the state, he loves the school, and I am sure he loves the coaches and his teammates. So I can see Frazier coming back. And if he does,
that'd be huge.
Can we get 14 knockdowns as an average per game?
You never know. I was about to say, because, I'm sure he would strive for improvement, being the perfectionist that he is, wants to do everything right. So I'm sure there's some way that he could improve, but I'd be hard pressed to see him improve and play better than he already is. But I'd love to see it, be possible. And fingers crossed he does decide to return, because West Virginia, like you said, could have a nice little setup next year with all the players they potentially have returning, really on both sides of the ball. And speaking of that, let's flip it over, talk about that other side a little bit. And while we're down there in the trenches, we might as well talk about West Virginia's defensive line, because they've been just as impressive as that offensive line. I think a lot of people were kind of scoffing in the preseason when the defensive line, Coach Andrew Jackson was talking about being able to have hockey lineup changes. He had so much defensive line depth, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, that's just coach speak. They're not going to really play that many defensive linemen consistently." But you've seen it in every game. Even here in conference, last game playing 10, 11 defensive linemen. So it's hard to single out a single guy's play there, because they've all been good. Really, essentially no drop off from the first team to the second team. But when you look at that defensive line, just what's impressed you most from their play this season, if you can really single out anything, because it's all been so impressive.
Well, I'm going to sidestep a minute, because I want to answer a comment that I've seen here. So, the Yates 27 asking about a shot at the conference this year. And do they have a shot? Yeah, sure they do. If they can maintain the same level of intensity on defense and don't have more injuries.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, is the depth with the injuries.
They've got a chance to beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma is very good, but they have, they almost beat him year before last when they were highly ranked due to coaching. And Coach Brown knows how to game plan. But I have a feeling they're going to lose one game that they shouldn't. I think the defense is going to have a bad game somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
Either because losing focus, something like that, or just all of these places where we've hurried the quarterback into a bad throw. We end up with a game like Penn State where we hurried the quarterback and he still made the throw.
Yeah.
I think we're going to lose one more game, possibly two more games. We could make it into the championship. Of course, it depends on how much the other teams beat each other up. But I just think there are too many potential weaknesses that teams might exploit. Right now on defense, part of what's working is the defensive coaches keep coming up with new game plans.
Yeah.
Which kind of segues back into your question with the defensive line. It's hard to say what is most impressive.
Right.
But no, it's not hard to say. It's the level of dedication to the team concept.
Touche.
What is working is the fact that these guys are playing most of the time assignment football. Where we've gotten hurt has been, when we lose containment. And that's often going to be either the bandit or whoever's on the outside taking in too deep a cut, like trying, because they're stopping a run up the middle is not their job. And as long as they are dedicated to doing their job and trusting their teammates to do theirs, the defense is great. So the fact, and I said that way back when people were saying, hey, the defensive line can't be as good as last year because we don't have any stars. And if you play your assignments, then the defense is better. You haven't seen a lot of 40-yard runs right up the gut. And if you remember, that was happening a lot last year.
Good point.
And
it was.
That almost certainly was somebody not maintaining lane integrity. And obviously Jefferson would be the number one prospect since he was in the middlemost. So Lockhart gets pressure, but he seems to be where he is supposed to be when he's supposed to be. And that's the thing with every guy on that line. They are where they're supposed to be most of the time. And that getting any group of people to cooperate is impressive. So the way the line is playing together, I think, is the thing that impresses me most.
Yeah, I think so too. It really is. And, it goes back to what you said earlier about the buy-in and the mindset to go along with the culture. And, you've heard the coaching staff in the past even talk about that when they've talked about some of the issues on the, runs they've given up in years past, that it was guys, out of position trying to make a play rather than, doing their 1 of 11, as they call it, doing their part. And this season, you can tell you've got guys that all they care about is doing their part and whatever it takes, on any given play, just playing each play, doing their job to try and, get the win at the end of the day. And that's why we're seeing the results that we're seeing. And that's across that defensive line. Everyone, very selfless. And you've seen a lot of people making plays. It's almost been a different person every game. It seems like that's been wreaking havoc, but West Virginia's been wreaking a lot of it, be it those defensive line or those bandits that you mentioned, Bartlett and Bradley. But, then you get into the linebacking core at the next level, which has been phenomenal early in this season. We talked a lot about Lee Coba and Trey Latham being virtually interchangeable at the Will and Mike linebacker positions. And Trey Latham was having a phenomenal season, which just made his injury against TCU that much more devastating to see. And you have to hope that he has a good bounce back, something that's going to be, he's going to have a long road to recover from, but hopefully he's able to come back next season in time for the start of the season, because West Virginia has a lot of young linebackers there and has a lot of potential there. And, speaking of those young guys, one of those will now be filling in as a starter, that being Ben Cutter, a true freshman for the Mountaineers. Going to see him step into that starting role with the wheel spot to fill the void that Lathan's going to leave there. He'll be teaming up with Lee Koba as a starter. And, of course, you'll probably now see a little bit more playing time for Jaffa Veras and Caden Bizer. So, not only, you can talk a little bit about Lathan and Koba and what they did early in the season, but I want to know what you think, moving forward, if West Virginia, playing these younger guys can hold up there at that position, throughout the remainder of this season. They're going to have 7 straight games. And, is that depth going to come back to bite them there and playing some more young guys that are a bit inexperienced? Do you worry about them maybe being out of position at times because that linebacking core has been such a strength early in this season?
Another thing people have complained about with Coach Brown, his recruiting classes aren't, as good as people claim they are. Hell, look at linebacker. We lost Trotter before the season, and we still have Koba and Lathan playing great. We lose Lathan, we've still got Ben Cutter. And we've seen Cutter play. And is he going to make mistakes? Oh, yeah. He's going to get fooled on some runs. He's going to be out of position on some passes. And he is going to recover and learn, because that's the type of player that Brown is recruiting. So I don't know if you'll see him make the same mistake twice. And I do believe when he makes those mistakes, there will be somebody around to help. Because that's the thing with this defense, we're not seeing one guy around the ball carrier. We're seeing multiple. We're seeing one guy slow the runner down, somebody else make the tackle. One guy force the quarterback out of the pocket, another guy make the sack. You said we're seeing different guys every week kind of step up to make the havoc plays, but we are still seeing it as a team. So it's not a problem if one guy does make a mistake. Somebody else is in their spot. Now, because last year where we had this problem is we had guys trying to cover for somebody before the play even started. They were getting out of position. But when you have guys playing loose, playing fast, and playing where they should be, you end up having multiple players who can make the play. So when you play hard and fast, you make mistakes. But if you have teammates who are there to take advantage of the havoc you just created, then good things still happen. Favaris, he's been in the program longer, hasn't played except special teams. But if you go back and watch the spring game, he was making plays.
He was.
He would probably be the fastest linebacker we've got. I think he was like 4.4 speed when he came in as a defensive back. And Mike Joseph has been increasing the speed, and he's been increasing speed, weight, and strength all at the same time.
It's been impressive.
And when we talk about buy-in, that's where the buy-in starts. We've had guys in the weight room and the nutrition program. Upgrading the nutrition program is huge. But Bizer, we haven't really seen this season. He was good enough to play last season, so he got some experience. A little surprised we haven't seen him more than we have this year. I'm not sure. That would be possibly a question to ask Coach Brown. I mean, it's probably just, hey, Koba and Lathan were playing so well, you don't want to bring anybody else in.
Right.
Again, it is going to be one question really is going to be, can they still flip Koba and whoever else is in between the Mike and Will the way they have been, because that's caused some confusion. And I don't know if Beiser or Favera, well, I expect Faveras is good at blitzing. Pretty sure we saw him blitz a few times in the spring game.
Yeah.
But if we can keep flipping the players around so that the offense isn't quite sure what to do, that will help. Although the more we do that, the better offenses are going to prepare for it. So, that sort of thing, it's not going to work as well at the end of the season as at the beginning. But I think we will still be very, very good at linebacker. But again, the where of the season becomes a bigger issue. Cutter was starting to get in to give these guys a break, and we have to be able to do that. You can't expect a linebacker to play 90% of the plays for the entire season. They will wear down.
Yeah. Yeah, especially, 7 straight games they're going to have to play now following this bye week. So certainly going to need some of those depth pieces to step up. Faveras, Beiser, as you mentioned there. Maybe you'll eventually get Austin Cave back from that injury, hopefully. Who knows? We'll see what happens with that. But I think, when you mention Ben Cutter, and hopefully he does continue to improve throughout the season, and he does learn from the mistakes that he's ultimately going to make due to his inexperience. I think that's, a big thing that you'll look at is probably, as you said, he shouldn't make the same one twice, and he probably won't, judging just by how he's played already through his true freshman season. But it's also good that, as you mentioned, we're not only swarming to the football, but also you got a guy that's a bit of an eraser out there that can erase some mistakes in Lee Koba, who can kind of be all over the field. So that's good there at the linebacker position. So despite the injury to Trey Lathan, I think there's some talent there, and certainly with the starters, maybe not be too much of a drop-off going to Cutter. The only thing, as you mentioned, is are they going to be, still interchangeable between the Mike and Will? And that remains to be seen. So we'll see how that plays out moving forward. But let's talk about the back end now. That's the issue, last season that everyone wanted to talk about throughout the offseason. The concern was the secondary wasn't going to be any good yet again, but they've proven, that to be, a fallacy that had, been created throughout this offseason, because some of these guys that they brought in have really panned out in a big way. I'm thinking of Beanie Bishop and Anthony Wilson as starters in the back end, Anthony Wilson at the cat safety position, and of course, Beanie Bishop being the best performing West Virginia cornerback. I guess that's up for debate, though, with Malachi Ruffin, because things have really been shored up there since he took over as a starter for Wilson Lamp, who we haven't seen a ton of there. He's been getting more work on special teams, but we have seen Jacoby Spells get into spell Malachi Ruffin a few times in the past couple of games, and I think you're going to need to see Wilson Lamp and Spells get a few snaps, per game, a handful, because going on playing all game for Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin, as you mentioned with the linebackers, it's going to be virtually unsustainable for, the remainder of the season. So you need those guys to step up at the cornerback position. And then at the safety position, the health of Aubrey Burks, obviously up in the air, but we seem to have the best possible news that we could have from as scary as it looked out there on the field on Saturday. Remains to be seen how quickly they will allow him to, be cleared and come back to play, but looks like we will get him back at some point. So not as worried about the safety position as it appears. You will still have Anthony Wilson and Aubrey Burks as your starter. And then, of course, you've got Marcus Floyd, who's really been performing well. You'd love to add another person in there to the mix after the injury to Keyshawn Cobb. But West Virginia's secondary, much maligned as it was throughout the offseason for us, has really performed well this season, especially here in Big 12 play these past couple of weeks. the corners, Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin, doing a great job on the outside. Bishop may be one of the better transfer additions West Virginia picked up, especially on the defensive side. That's really, I think, going unheralded. I can't say enough good things about him. And then, of course, the safeties doing their thing as well. But have you been impressed by the cornerback play and the safety play? Or I guess the better question would be, have you been surprised? Because, you know, it was the question mark.
Impressed, yes. Surprised, no. Again, it goes back to last season. And, you know, there was a reason for the problems that was not related to talent. They had issues with the scheme of the defense, particularly after losing Woods and having to move everybody around. Lost Woods, Mallinger, Burks was out for a while. Everybody back there was dinged. So they were playing under really bad conditions. But if you, again, the last 4 games, everybody concentrates on Garrett Green coming in and the offense, but the defense changed too. And I'm sure that's when they started with this simplification idea, and it let the players play faster. You started to, you know, that team was flying to the ball the last 4 games. They were still making some coverage mistakes, and they were still, you know, Spells was still, 175, 180 pounds and getting pushed around. And Wilson Lamp, same thing. But they were playing better and faster. And then the coaches started talking about what they had seen, what changes they were making, how they were fixing things, plus not only bringing in Miller, Cobb, Wilson, Bishop, but they talked about why they picked these guys, and it all made sense. They identified the problem, they identified the fix, and they applied the fix. So really there was no good reason to doubt the defensive backfield. It was just a question of how well and how soon it would come together. Now, of course, we saw against Penn State, it didn't.
I was a little bit worried then, but yeah.
I mean, that's why you, to a certain degree, that's why you like to play a lesser opponent the first game, because you are going to be trying to learn things. On the other hand, I think Penn State clearly exposed some issues that could not be seen in practice. Wilson Lamp evidently does not make mistakes in practice, but he does make them in games. He earned the start. He was considered better than Ruffin. And then it didn't work. And I'm not sure we would have seen that if we hadn't been playing a really good team. So that loss enabled us to learn some critical things that we might not have learned as quickly. If Wilson Lamp had been starting, well, I think he started against Duquesne, but they pulled him in a hurry because he was making the same mistakes. And that was critical, obviously. Ruffin he's never going to be the most talented player on the field. But he is going to be working as hard as anybody and is willing. You know, he was working at safety last year, and they had to throw him in at corner when he hadn't even been practicing corner for 2 weeks. And they say, hey, we need you at corner. And he said, okay. There wasn't a who, me, old crap or anything.
No hesitation.
And I mean, if you can have, well, I was going to say, if you can have a whole team of Malachi Ruffins, you'll take them. And by golly, guess what we've got?
That's right. That's right.
I hadn't thought about it before, But yeah, everybody on there is a roughing.
That's true. That's a great point.
Some are more talented than him, you know, but none of them work harder or are more willing than he is. And of course, yeah, Bishop has, just worked out so well. And everybody was talking about, oh, hey, he couldn't even start at Minnesota and blah, blah, blah. And well, evidently Minnesota just screwed up, didn't they?
Minnesota missed out. Yeah, that's what happened.
Again, he wasn't playing against passing offenses as much. But there is something that Coach Brown and his staff saw that Minnesota didn't. And of course, scheme may fit him better here than it did at Minnesota. That's always a factor. I expected him to be good and thought he might start. I didn't expect him to be this good. I would say, yeah, Bishop is the surprise. Because the two things about him that you could not have predicted are just how good he is and just how many interceptions he's dropped.
Man, he should lead the country.
Yeah, I mean, come on, he dropped 2 in the first game and then grabbed a couple and then, and I'm sure nobody is more upset by it than he is. But it's still the fact that he's in position to get the interceptions. Those are not completed passes. He's not just making a tackle. And it's not even just knocking them down. He's there. And he's there because he knows how to play angles. He knows when to be aggressive. He knows how to get his eyes on the ball. And those are repeatable skills. He hasn't just been lucky.
True.
So we're either going to see more interceptions or more dropped interceptions. I wouldn't be sure I wouldn't be surprised if he's in position to intercept a pass every game until they stop throwing his way. And they are. Teams will almost certainly attack Ruffin and the center as the season progresses. Ruffin has typically shown he's up for it.
Yeah.
He makes mistakes. Every cornerback does. But he is superb at, setting that aside and just making a big play next time around.
He's a hard worker.
But again, criminy, just the thought of how much these guys are going to have to play. We're already beating everybody in time of possession, which limits how much the defense is on the field. But we're going to have to increase that more. It's crazy. We need to increase the time of possession, but we also need to increase the number of explosive plays.
Yeah, it's hard. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul there.
But if you can get up, 40-10, and the defense gets a little tired, that's not as big a problem.
That's true.
Although we have seen some comebacks, of late that worry you. But
looking at you, UCF.
I'm also thinking of USC, who almost
that's true too.
But I'm scared by injury and wear. I am not worried about talent or heart.
Mm-hmm.
Those we have, and I'm not worried about coaching. People fire Brown, fire Jordan. It's no, these guys have always been good. Things haven't always worked as planned or desired, but the ideas have always been good, and the willingness to learn. I mean, people say that Brown doesn't change, and that just means they're not looking closely enough, because he is constantly examining himself
Yes.
and adapting. But if you close your eyes because you don't want to see something that disagrees with you, you don't notice the changes he's making.
Yeah.
Or his actual willingness to play young players when they earn it. But he is always doing what he thinks gives the team the best chance to win. Fans seem to think they are experts, and they seem to think that they know all the factors while they're sitting on the couch. But it's the TCU game, he takes the kickoff rather than going on defense, and it was because of wind direction, and that's not a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be common to factor the wind in. And I don't, when we're sitting at home, we don't know how hard the wind's blowing or which way.
Right.
The announcers do, and those announcers were not good.
No, it was pretty rough.
Yeah, they are supposed to at least know enough to say, hey, he's taking the kick. I wonder if it's due to wind direction. But it's not even high-level football. It's basic, and everybody was going, oh, no, hey, Brown doesn't know what he's doing, So I'm kind of tired of that, but
yeah, I get it.
A lot of people are going to keep, keep saying that, hey, they're winning against lesser. You had people who were saying, oh, it's all about, wins and losses. Brown has to get fired because he hasn't won enough games. And now we've got the wins, and they're saying, well, it's not the wins, it's the quality of the opponent that matters.
I don't get it. I don't understand it one bit either. And, like you said, he's consistently, singling out, not even just the little details like you mentioned there, receiving the ball to, because of the wind direction, that being the sole reason, which ended up paying off in multiple ways, helping our field goals, helping, their trajectory be lower, which helped lead to our blocked field goals. But then also he's always just singling out areas the team needs to improve and get better in, and really, focusing and trying to hone in on those to have, a better product on the field to be able to produce those wins. And look no further than the secondary this season, honed in on that as a weakness. How do we fix it? What was going wrong? Okay, let's change up the way that we're playing coverages and go out and do that. And then now you look at the results on the field because they did that, and it's really paying off. And so I just don't see how people are looking at this team and saying that they're winning in spite of coaching and just crazy things like that. Because to me, the main reason that they're winning is because, Neil Brown is, for lack of a better term, coaching his ass off.
Well, and recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Because, over time, they brought in the players who could work with this type of coaching and this type of game. Now, I'm not talking about run heavy or anything like that. I'm talking about the level of heart, the level of team concept, the desire to win, and not just the desire to be a star.
Yeah.
The patience. Look at Garrett Green. People have been, since his freshman year, there have been people out there saying he should be, the starter. And he wasn't saying that. He was supporting Daggy, and he has often discussed why he wasn't the starter. He understood it. He knew he had to work hard. He knew what he had to work on. He's got the football IQ, same as Mark Hill has. Mark Hill knows why he's not starting. That's why they're both still there. That's why they may both stay next year. They understand the game. They understand the coaching. And they evidently like it. And you're seeing that through a lot of the players. I think they have carefully built a team,
Mm-hmm.
and one that understands what team means, what football means. This idea that, Brown firmly believes in football as the great teacher of how to live. It's an old idea that a lot of people have spouted and very, very few believe in. I grew up reading books by Claire B., the Chip Hilton sports series, and it's all about sportsmanship and doing the right thing. And, I believed it all. And, Coach Brown basically just stepped out of one of those books.
Yeah.
He's Bill Stewart with better teeth. And people always made fun of Stewart's teeth and his hair and way too much. But this, what we are seeing this year is what we would have seen in Bill Stewart's fourth year had he been able to continue. They philosophically are the same. Again, both are teachers. Both have, teaching in their background, their family. And I don't even remember where that idea, what we were talking about when we started.
Hey, that's all right.
But some people are never going to be happy with Coach Brown just because there is a clash in personality and philosophy. Same as I would never, Dana Holgerson could have won the national championship and I wouldn't have liked him as a coach.
Right.
Because I so thoroughly disagree with his philosophy, his personality for that matter.
I was about to say the personality is enough to rub you the wrong way alone.
But a lot of people, given the choice, they would rather hang out with Holgerson rather than Brown. I'm the other way. And that is, that's not a right or wrong thing. That's just people are different.
Yeah.
But when it comes to looking at how good they are as a coach, that's a different matter. And it's not all just about wins and losses. Wins matter. How you get there matters. And the thing with Brown, I use the word built. And that's important because he is constructing a program, not just a team. This is just the start of the payoff. And if you look at the roster, look at the guys who are coming up. This team is going to be very, very good for the foreseeable future. And you look at our current recruits and you're saying, well, looks to be good for at least the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And we're not having, these ups and downs, 10 wins, then 6 wins or that sort of thing. And we're not winning. It looks like we're winning just through sort of a system quirk because of the defense. That's not true. We're winning because of an overall solid program.
Yes.
That's the difference if you go back and compare to Rodriguez, who only had 2.5 exceptional years. The rest of the time, he is a slightly above average coach with lots of ups and downs and then losing in the bowl game. It was only, his biggest years that we had the big bowl wins. And it was a system quirk, partly because his spread was new. Defenses weren't built for it. And he hit the jackpot in the combination of White, Slayton, Schmidt, and Renaud. You take any one of those guys out of the equation and you you add a loss, at least one loss to each season. You take two of them out of the equation, and you're a 7 or 8 win team. And I think and USF was already stopping his offense, and Pitt figured out how to stop it because he did the same thing over and over and over and over again. Sooner or later, you know where it's going. And I think that's why he got out of town, was he knew the next year was going to be back to where he was. And he has spent his entire career since trying to create that same combination. And he created it the first time partly out of luck. Come on. Schmidt recruited himself.
True. That's true, definitely.
But yeah, and on some of the boards, I have been accused of being Coach Brown in disguise. I have been accused of being a relative. I've been accused of being his wife. And I wouldn't mind being his relative. I'm not up for being his wife. But I like what he does. He's the coach I wish I'd had.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
Yeah, if I'd gone into coaching, he's the coach I'd like to have been. So yeah, I like the guy.
As do I.
I'm not at all ashamed of it, and I'm glad that he has won at West Virginia. He, was always going to be a successful coach at the upper level. And I'm just glad that it is at West Virginia, and the hope that he will be here for 20 years.
Fingers crossed. And it feels like he's hitting, a turning point now, potentially. Finally got that, career overall record at West Virginia to 500. Now he can start getting on the winning side of things and stay in there. And, you look back, and I think some people, I don't know what they thought the slogan meant when he, established it when he got here. He put trust to climb in for a reason. He knew, and, just to bring our conversation full circle back to where we started it at, he saw the culture that was here and how long it was going to take him to be able to get it to where he wanted it and where he needed it to be for it to be that way. And so that's why he said, trust to climb, bear with me. I'm going to get this thing right, but it's going to take me some time. And so now here we sit, year 5, a few years later, and we're starting to see that pay off, and we see what he was talking about and what he was building towards. And, we're getting to see the fruits of that labor now, and it all come to fruition as we sit here on a bye week, 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the Big 12 conference. And Forrest has really been a lot of fun, reviewing this team, going through it position by position. But one more time, I wanted to get you a chance to, plug your channel, plug your Facebook page, let people know where they can find all the great West Virginia football content you have over there. And I'm going to post a link to his channel directly in the chat one more time for you guys to click on it and go subscribe there. But go ahead and let them know, Forrest.
Well, of course, it is WVU football going deep. It's on YouTube. I have a Facebook page that I usually forget to check. And if you are interested in things other than football, you can find me all over the place, whether it's cats, antiques and collectibles, literature, movies. If you haven't checked out my original YouTube channel, which is just Forrest Poston, or Jinfor, Jinfor, you'll find some movie discussions there.
Right up my alley.
Yeah, if you've seen Mr. Holland's Opus, there's a video about that. So, but basically, yeah, if you just run a search on me, and you'll find me everywhere.
There you go. And it's great stuff. I enjoy it a lot, especially the WVU stuff, as I'm sure all of our subscribers and viewers here will as well. So if you're in here live, or even if you're watching this on a playback, be sure search up WVU Football Going Deep there. Subscribe to that channel. Some great West Virginia content. And if you are in here live or on a playback, hit the like button. Really helps us out. Helps this video's performance, future videos performances as well. And subscribe to us here at the Country Roads Webcast if you haven't already. And speaking of us, we're actually going to be having the TCU Review and Reaction podcast. I'm about to hit the upload button. It should be out on the channel literally probably as soon as Forrest and I get ready to wrap up here. It's already out on the audio side, so give that a listen, give that a view if you haven't already. Be sure and check that out. We provide our takeaways from the TCU game and then provide our predictions for some upcoming Big 12 games this weekend, with West Virginia on a bye week this week. So just look at some of the other Big 12 games. And then tomorrow night, I wanted to plug, there's going to be a live stream over on the West Virginia Voice of College Football channel. A bunch of different people getting together, and we're kind of going to discuss West Virginia's 4-1 start and, Neil Brown's seat cooling off, of course, and everything that we've kind of discussed here. Me and Forrest talking about Neil Brown. You get to hear me share some of those same thoughts in another group setting tomorrow night, and hear some more other people chime in on Neil Brown and the state of the program. So head over to the West Virginia Voice of College Football channel tomorrow night to check that out at 6:30. But having said that, Forrest, really appreciate you, coming on to the Country Roads Webcast channel for this live stream here, October 4th edition. Been a lot of fun reviewing the season up to this point. It's been a very successful one, and we've talked about a lot of different topics in regards to this Mountaineer football team. But is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to get a chance to talk about before we close up shop here?
I can't think of anything specific. I am glad you managed to get a few words in. And of course, pardon me while I have a sip of my coffee.
My guy, I'll have one with you.
That was the last of the cup there.
Beautiful. Perfect timing. This has been fun. We'll have to do it again soon. And guys, I encourage you again throughout Mountaineer Nation, go head over to WVU Football Going Deep. Give Forrest a subscription there and anywhere else as well that you can find him, that you may enjoy the content that he's putting out there, as he does a great job. As you've seen and heard here, really knows his stuff in regards to WVU football. So be sure and check that out, as well as future Mountaineer sports content we'll be putting out here on the Country Roads Webcast. Having said that, for my friend Forrest and myself, go ahead.
One last, I just saw a comment come up here. Mention, and I think we do need to mention that, because
especially with Holgerson coming up.
Oh, you can't recruit players to West Virginia. And there are people out there who still say that Brown doesn't get West Virginia. And I think part of the players play for the state because Neil Brown coaches for the state. He came in and made this his home. He didn't wait 5 years to buy a house.
Yeah, at least.
Well, that was Holgerson.
Yeah.
And I mean, he doesn't know as much about the state as Bill Stewart did, so he can't tell some of the stories. But he is Appalachian blood, Appalachian heart, and he is, well, I was going to say he's a West Virginian, but no, he's a Mountaineer.
He is a Mountaineer.
And a lot of people who say once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer don't understand crap about what being a Mountaineer means. But it means what we are seeing out of this team. The grit and the heart and the dedication are all of the best things about being a Mountaineer.
Indeed.
And the team is getting those from Neil Brown and the rest of the staff. Neil Brown loves the state and he respects the players. So, he is always going to go out there and try to get the best players in the state, even scholarship or walk-on. I mean, look what he has done with the walk-on program in West Virginia players. And C.J. Cole is likely to be up next year for, any open scholarships.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard to keep scholarships open because the recruiting is going to improve. That's one of the things we didn't talk about. It's not a review. It's the future. But the way this team is playing is going to do great things for recruiting for the type of player that Brown wants.
That's true.
So, we're going to see the guys from the state. And we still have a few players on this, from the state in the last year or two that we haven't seen much from yet, and still hope that we will. Oh shoot! Of course, we got a couple of them down from Kuz's way. He likes to talk up his local players. We got a court. Oh shoot! Was it
Cochran?
Cochran, yeah. And then of course this year we haven't heard anything. Got to ask Neil Brown about that Price that we brought in.
Judah Price. Yeah, that's right. I forgot.
For the speed, he doesn't have necessarily that lower body strength that sets White apart. But I'm still curious.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear what's happening with him. If Mike Joseph can work his magic with the lower body on Price, who knows? Can you imagine two guys with that kind of speed in the backfield?
That'd be impressive. And we've seen him do it with Clement. He came in as a preferred walk-on, redshirted, and then see him contributing this year. So you never know. Price could be the next in line to do it next year.
And that is because some of these players have question marks that keep them from getting as heavily recruited. Not entirely sure what Clement's question mark was. May have been his consistency. It may have been the blocking issue. So he didn't get offered a scholarship. But they, what's that word? Development?
That's right.
Another one of those things that certain fans claim Brown and his staff don't do. And then when you point out the development, they say the player did it themselves. Zach Frazier has turned himself into a great football player. Did you know that? The coaches haven't had anything to do with it because he's good and because he's from West Virginia that he's turned himself into this all on his own.
That's what they'd want you to believe. Yeah, they don't want to give any credit where credit's due sometimes.
Well, fortunately, they're wrong, because if they were right, this season would be a fluke.
You're right.
And we may have, this season could go down the toilet if we have two more injuries.
Yeah, they're on the brink.
All the heart in the world, but there are limits somewhere, I imagine. But the program won't, because we have this coaching staff now, and of course, we worry about losing players. Because NIL and all of that. And I don't think we'll lose that many because Brown is bringing in people who want to be here. But I'm worried about losing coaches.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true.
Belial Marshall was on the list of 30 under 30. And of course, the receivers haven't impressed everybody yet, but I think they will. Stewart, Leslie, all of the, we could lose half the coaching staff after this year.
It's something to be worried about. We're going to have to keep an eye on it for sure. Oh, don't scare me like that. Can't lose Chad.
Yeah. I know these guys like coaching with Brown. They have coached with him every chance they get. But if the offer is good, now, not everybody wants to be a head coach. I don't know, I'm not sure Jeff Castile ever wanted to be a head coach, even though he was possibly the greatest defensive coordinator West Virginia ever had. And I would have liked to see him get a shot at West Virginia.
Yeah.
But I don't think he wants it now. And I don't know if he ever did. So maybe some of these guys will stay just because they want to continue working with Neil Brown. But oh well, let's enjoy this season before we worry about next year.
I know that's one thing I keep thinking. Well, because that's another thing that comes to my mind. You mentioned the players, and everyone's talking about, oh man, everybody's so young. We're gonna have like 18 starters come back, and I'm just thinking of the past couple seasons where especially when you're successful, people are looking at our roster like, oh man, look how many defensive linemen they're playing. We can get this guy. He's 8th on their rotation. We can put him 4th in our. Just stuff like that comes to my mind, and I start to worry. So
Yeah,
I'm just trying not to think about it too much, like you said. Just try and enjoy the season while it's happening, and cross that bridge when I come to it.
We have C.J. Donaldson this year for 2 reasons: NIL and because he believes in the program.
Exactly.
West Virginia treated him right, so he wants to treat West Virginia right. Now, we will have to pony up NIL money. These guys are not going to stay at West Virginia if they get a huge offer someplace else. Those days are over. But I do not foresee losing a lot of players as long as Brown is here and Scott is here. And I know the defensive line adores Jackson. So if we can hold on to the coaches, I think we can hold on to almost all of the players. We're bound to lose some, and some of them are going to hurt. Fortunately, we also recruit really well. So
yeah, that's true. And they've shown that they can bounce back from losing, potentially big pieces. They've done it, a few years in a row now. And especially this year, you see them, really doing it in a big way. So, I think it's going to be a successful season. We'll just see how much success comes, moving forward. Hopefully it's still just as much as we've seen this first part of the season. But anything else you want to touch on here? Or we'll get ready to close this one out, Forrest.
Well, I think, it's almost 9:00 your time.
That's right. It's getting there, I guess. So it's been fun though. We're gonna do it again soon.
Oh yeah. So I was once known in college to tell stories for 7 hours.
Hey, that's all right.
So I could easily sit here and do that again, even without the coffee. However, I do have cats who need medications. Got to keep on schedule for that.
Right on. I understand how that goes, but appreciate you joining me tonight. And like I said, we'll do it again in the near future. One more time, just want to remind you guys, go subscribe to WVU Football Going Deep here on YouTube. But we're really, excited about the job that this coaching staff's done with this team and the point that this team's at, and the fact that they've really instilled this great culture into this team that all of us West Virginians can be proud of, this hard-edged physical style that they're playing with, this blue-collar mentality, and hopefully it continues to pay off as the season progresses. And we'll be here to continue to talk about it on the Country Roads webcast, as Forrest will over on WVU Football Going Deep. So be sure to check out both places for your West Virginia sports content moving forward. And for my friend Forrest and myself, until next time, let's go Mountaineers.